Major! Hi, hello, welcome in. Hope you had a not terrible day at work. I know that's kind of the bar we have right now, but yeah, I hope you had a decent enough day. Today, blue chunk. Oh no, that stinks. I'm sorry. Well, hopefully you have a nice, relaxing evening. And hey, tomorrow's Friday. Oh, I keep seeing stuff on how cold it's going to be this weekend in like the Midwest. And yeah, I think that's hitting everywhere, but lo likely be heading to bed here soon. Oh, it's no worries. Tomorrow's a high of -4. Yeah, do what you gotta do, Major. Take care of yourself if you need to take off early. No worries. I have the chat up on my screen, so I'll be able to keep an eye on it. So, yeah, don't worry about stream. I'll do my best. um, yeah, take care of yourself if you need to go to bed early. Do that. Okay, I think I got everything ready. Let's start off with our puzzle. Ooh, we got a triple name. I already know what it is. Is that bad? That I can look at this and be like, oh yeah, I know exactly who this is. We'll still go through it. Hey, Major knows it too. Let's see. Oscar winner for 2008. Last name, yeah, they have the E with the accent on it, and the last name starts with a C. Man, 2008, that's going back. That's the year I graduated college. So it's a long fucking time ago. Oh, us. Um, oh, Elizabeth Moss. When I saw the 4 letters in the last name, I thought it might have been Winston Duke, but it didn't end with the right letter. Brokeback Mountain. So it's not. Ooh, Major hitting the 5 stream streak. Major's going streaking. um, who else was in Brokeback Mountain? Let's see, Heath Ledger, Jake Gyllenhaal. Neither of those fit. Anne Hathaway. Michelle Williams. Yeah. And American Beauty. Oh. Who played the other guy? I can't remember off the top of my head. I think that's who that is, though. can't think of their name. Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. Last name starts with a G. Goblet of Fire is the fourth one. So let's see. It's not Daniel Radcliffe. Not Emma Watson. What's the kid that plays Ron's name? Michael Gambon. Last name doesn't quite fit. Oh, Rupert Grint. Thank you, each. Oh, Brendan Gleeson as Mad-Eye Moody. Yeah. Also, hi, hello, Weech. How you doing? Hope you're having a good day. Yeah. Um, Brendan Gleeson, one of his sons, who is in quite a few movies. I always hate when he shows up in this because like I can never spell his name correctly because it's Donal Gleeson, but it's like Domnhol, some shit like that. Yeah, it's pronounced Donal, but it's Domnhall. Like fuck. That and Saoirse Ronan. Like I can spell Ronan, first name. Not always great. Lurkin, have to go shovel the driveways. Yeah, Major and I were just talking about the weather hitting kind of the Midwest of the States and parts of Canada. Yeah, it's going to be very cold for y'all. It's going to be kind of cold for me. Magnolia. Someone with the middle initial. So it's not William H. Macy. Oh, yeah, John C. Reilly would work. Is it Reiley? Yeah, might be it. I always forget like how many like acclaimed movies he shows up in, because a lot of people always think of like Talladega Nights and Step Brothers and stuff like that. Damn, we're already down to 3.5 minutes. We're gonna have to be quick about this. Josh Hartnett? King's Speech. Don't know off the top of my head. Travis Bickle, that's easy. Robert De Niro. I like him in his memes. Yeah. Yeah, like almost any situation you can find a John C. Reilly meme that fits. Roads, where we're going, we don't need roads. Doc Brown. No, it wasn't Colin Firth for the King's Speech because it was only 3 letters. Yeah, that was the Colin Firth in the Stuttering King. it's not Jeff Goldblum. Oh, Guy Pearce. Yeah. So Doc Brown is Christopher Lloyd. Still have yet to, I love Memento. I've seen it quite a few times. Uh, keep checking the time because we're getting close. Alright, Major. Hope you get some sleep. Hopefully tomorrow goes better. And yeah, I'm here if you need to send me funny memes on Instagram or vent or anything. Alright, yeah, we're running out of time, so we're just gonna hit it and see what we missed. Okay, our Oscar winner for 2008 was Penelope Cruz. I always forgot she won an Oscar. um, okay, Elizabeth Moss spells it with an S instead of a Z. And then John Cho? He was in American Beauty? I do not remember that. He must have played like a high school student or something. Granted, I've also not watched that movie in quite a few years because the lead actor is quite problematic. Um, okay, Pierce is Pearce, not Pier. Whatever. Okay, it was. We were running out of time, so I didn't have time to talk this one out, but Independence Day. I thought for a second it might have been Jeff Goldblum, but the letters didn't match, and I was like, oh, it's probably the president, but I couldn't pull his name quick enough. Bill Pullman. Truman Show, Laura Linney, who played his wife. Oscar winner for 2002, Halle Berry. Love Actually, Martin Freeman. Yeah. I don't remember who he played in that, but that had like so many British actors in it. And then, yeah, Renee Zellweger, that makes sense for starting with a Z for the last name in 2004. So, but we solved the puzzle. 5 played, 100% success rate. We crushing it. Alright. Oh, we can close that. Okay. We are now into writing stuff. At least that's the plan. So last week we kind of developed some stuff, or not last week, Tuesday, 2 days ago. Feels like last week. Um, yeah, we kind of developed some stuff with our characters and came up with names for them, so it's easier to talk about. So we have Margaret, who is our protagonist, and Helene. John Cho, he was one of the couples touring the house of Kevin Spacey's wife, who was in Realist. Okay. Yeah. I do not remember that whatsoever. Then we have kind of our antagonist or outside, I don't know what to call it, adversary, the hunters. So we're starting off our setting in colonial America, and we kind of outlined what might be our first scene and figured out some answers to questions that I had going into stuff. So tonight, we're going to try to continue outlining some stuff and kind of building out our plot more, because I think we could build our characters out more or try to figure out the setting a little bit more, but sometimes just like diving into what we want the plot to be, we'll run into questions kind of naturally. And when we run into those questions, we'll have to figure out how our characters would fit into it. And that sometimes helps develop the characters further. So that's kind of the plan for tonight. Let's center these out. And then I brought over this. So one of the screenwriting books that I read years ago has their 22 point plot structure. And they kind of go through point by point of what kind of benchmarks that you can hit as you're going through a movie to help keep the pace going, and things that you should I think kind of benchmarks you should hit. And you can apply this to most movies today. Like you could go through and be like, check, 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 check. So the first thing we wanted to start off with was self-revelation, need, and desire. So we want to start at the end point by figuring out our hero's self-revelation. So when we were looking through the writing prompts we had, this is what I was trying to at least start thinking about with what the writing prompts are, who the characters in it would be, and what self-revelation they would need to get to in the climactic moment of the story at the end point. And so, with our main character, Margaret, we have kind of a flaw that we wrote out in our first scene, where a moment of cowardice is kind of strong way to describe it, but she gets put in a situation that's kind of fight or flight, and she decides to save herself instead of maybe trying to save Helene. And I think this is going to be very important for her throughout the story. The thing that scares her most is being discovered as a witch. So her self-revelation, so that's her weakness. So her self-revelation needs to be the antithesis of this, right? She needs to stop being scared and embrace her life as a witch. And that's the journey she's going to have to take over the course of our movie. Now, all the rest of it is how we test her, what complications we throw at her, and how we get her to that end point. So we have a good idea of our first point here. So on to our second point. The character's ghost and setting up the story world. The ghost is kind of the sequence that we outlined last time. An event from the past that still haunts the hero in the present, an open wound, the source of psychological and moral weakness. So, yeah, this is our first sequence that we wrote out. This is showing Margaret at her lowest point when Helene gets taken prisoner by the hunters, and instead of being able to help her, Margaret ends up running away, and she ends up altering her face in order to help protect herself. So, we've established her ghost, an event from her past that still haunts her. So, once we get to our inciting incident, we're going to have a desire for Margaret, our protagonist. And it's very clearly going to be her desire is going to be to reconnect with Helene when she finds out she's still alive. But her ghost is what's going to hold her back through our story. So you have kind of this internal conflict with the character that's always kind of pulling them in different directions. And then along with our ghost, we have the story world. So, story world should be an expression of your hero, shows their weakness, needs, desire, and obstacles. So, most of our story world is going to be a version of the real world, but we can play with the fact having witches be real in our world. And if witches are real, then they need to have a counterbalance, and that's going to be our hunters. And we include both of those things in our first sequence, where we show Margaret's ghost. So we have all of that together, and then I think after this first sequence, there's going to be a big time jump, and that's also going to be part of the story world where we show this isn't taking place just in one period in time, but it's going to progress throughout history. So then we have our characters' weakness and need. Some of this already comes up in this first point, so it's kind of repetitive, but what it is Margaret's weakness. When she's put in a difficult situation, she runs away because she's afraid of being discovered as a witch. Scared of being discovered as a witch. We know this. Her need is what she needs to fulfill in order to have a better life, overcoming her weakness. And we kind of talked about that with the self-revelation, and she needs to learn how to embrace living as a witch and not being constantly scared. The problem is the trouble or crisis that our character faces at the beginning of the story. So her problem are the hunters. Yeah, the hunters may end up being less of characters and more of like a force of nature that just kind of exists in this world that Margaret always feels like they're closing in on her. But they might be something more. Haven't quite figured that out yet. But we will get there. Alright, so most of parts 1, 2, and 3 I don't know why they called it 22. It's not even 20. It's not really 22. So these first three are all pretty well tied together. It's looking into the character's backstory, figuring out things in their past, what's holding them back, what the story world looks like for them. Sorry, the music in the background had some radio talk. All right, so number four is where we're at now. We have not quite figured this part out, and then so we're gonna dive more into it tonight, I think. Sage! Hi, hello, welcome in. You missed Major. She had to take off early to get some sleep, so um, you can't. Yeah, everyone seems to be taking off early tonight. They got the storms hitting the Midwest, so Weege has to go um, shovel some snow. Yeah, Major had to get some sleep. Yeah, sleep is good. Sleep is important. Um, but yeah, I'm gonna keep working on the story and try to figure some stuff out. If you can only stay a little bit, that's cool. Hope you're having a good day. Your week's going good. Everything's going good. Ooh, you got 4:30 work. That does not sound fun. But also, um, Oscar nominations were announced this morning. Um, K-pop Demon Hunters was nominated for Best Animated Feature and Best Original Song for Golden. So I figured you would be happy about that. And I think they're the favorites in both of those, but it's still early. I'm hoping we get the singers for it to do a live version of Golden at the Oscar ceremony. I'm hoping that happens, but we'll see. And I saw there are going to be a next wave of K-pop Demon Hunter skins in Fortnite at some point soon, and one of them is going to be the lead guy from the boy band, the what was it, the Saja Boys? Yeah, yeah, yeah. I still need to get what's her name skin? Oh, Ginu's the guy's name. Um, what's the main girl's name? I still need to get her skin, I think. Rumi, yes. I need to get her skin when sometime. It'll probably come back when they do the reruns at least. So whenever I actually get on Fortnite and see them, I need to get that one. All right, go get some sleep. Hopefully 4:30 isn't too rough, and yeah, we'll see you around. All right, where were we? Our inciting incident. This is kind of the next thing we need to tackle. So, what is an inciting incident? Um, so this is the point in the movie. It always happens. Usually, all the screenwriting books say you want it about 10 minutes into the movie. And this is the point where something from the outside comes into the story and kind of gets the plot to take off. Um, I mean, the most obvious example isn't 10 minutes into the movie, but if we think about Star Wars, like the inciting incident, the thing from the outside that propels Luke into um, action over the course of the movie is finding the message from R2D2, right? That's our inciting incident. It's something from the outside comes into our hero's world and starts propelling them into action. So, as it said in this one, event from the outside causes hero to come up with a goal and take action. Jumpstart the hero out of paralysis and force them to act, a call to action. The call to action refusal to call comes more from the um, Joseph Campbell hero with 1,000 faces, and that's more of the hero's journey, which maps onto a lot of screenwriting structure as well. So what are we going to do with Margaret that pulls her out of paralysis and forces her to act? Well, we already said her weakness is fear of being discovered as a witch. So when we jump forward in time, this isn't necessarily part of the outline, but I just need to talk it out and we'll figure out what we keep. So there's going to be a jump forward in time. And we see Margaret in hiding or kind of on the run. Always looking over her shoulder. So the threat to her isn't as present as it was in the first sequence, but we need to have a sense that she doesn't feel like she's out of the woods, so to speak. Now we need to figure out where in time we're jumping forward and where. But as she's in hiding, I think the first time because we're going to have their lives intersect at different times throughout history. So there needs to be different ways of Margaret finding Helene and trying to connect with her. But the first time I think needs to be by chance. So Margaret sees. I need to copy and paste Helene's name because of the accents. Sees Helene. Or someone she thinks looks just like her. Because as far as Margaret knows, Helene was killed. So, that brings us to a lot of questions we have to figure out. When? Where? Why? Because we have the who, Margaret and Helene. We have what happens. They meet again. So the when, I don't really have a good sense of yet. I know I talked about wanting to connect what the witches are going through with what real groups in American history went through. But we don't need them to be exactly line up. And I want to kind of explore areas that haven't been explored if we can. Because, I mean, the obvious stuff is going to, you know, Civil War era, the 1860s, the 1960s, the Civil Rights era, going to World War II in the 1940s. Um, hmm. So I think the when and the where are going to have to be tied together. But once we figure out those, we might be able to answer the why. Why Margaret is there and Helene is there. I think with Helene, it's going to be tied to her drive that she wants to help other witches who are being hunted. Yeah. So those are questions we need to answer about. They more tie into like the setting. And once we answer those, they'll fill in some of the gaps. But for the plot, we know Margaret sees Helene, or someone she thinks looks just like her. But because of her flaw, Margaret has to be held back. Yeah, she has to continue to be conflicted. And then we also have the complication of Margaret doesn't look like herself either. Alright, yeah. We got lots of questions to think about. Okay. Then another thing I was thinking about is trying to define our witches a little better. Okay, this has a lot of stuff we could go through. Alright, yeah, let's figure out what kind of magics we have. Or what kind of witches we have and what kind of magic they can do. And we have to figure out kind of where their magic comes from, but I think when we figure out what kind of magic they do, we'll be able to tie that together better. Witchcraft can associate with dark arts, a vicious system of techniques based around darker side of magic that involve curses, dangerous... No. At least I don't think they start there. Herbalism, by studying and practicing use of medicinal plants, fungi, minerals, animal parts, which can create various potions, ointments that can heal and induce other effects. Magic channeling, witches can utilize any effect they want, influence arcane energy. Spell casting, can harness magic for spells. White arts. Witchcraft can associate with white arts, a benevolent system to harness magic of a pure side of magic that is typically used for helping other people with healing the mind, body, and soul. And then personal magic, witches are born with the ability to use magic. Their supernatural powers are... Yes. Through blood from their ancestors are bound to their emotion, thought, and soul. Witches about drawing magic from outside. Huh? Strain from rules that would normally hinder the use of magic for a certain amount of time. That's a weird sentence. Witches about drawing magic from outside sources or restrain from rules. Okay. Yeah, I think our witches are born with the ability to use magic. I'm going to copy this because I think they say it concisely. Magical items. Okay. Witch-related powers and abilities in fiction. Common powers of witches and covens worldwide. 15 signs you're a witch. Do you have these powers? Let's see if we're a witch. If you keep a journal or diary, you might be a witch. So I want to see... Okay, yeah, so the term witchcraft arrived with European colonists. Yeah, we know about the Salem witch trials, but we're not using that specifically. They prosecuted witchcraft as late as 1833. That is wild. Okay, so... So, that... I like that. I want to copy that as well. So, witchcraft in Latin America and African witchcraft. So that can tie into some of the groups that Helene is working with, trying to help escape. Why does Marvel Rivals come up on here? Okay, list of powers a witch can have. We don't want a charmed wiki. BFT, what's up? How's it going? We sigh every time Rad says 6'7". No, we are not 6'7". Yep, we are 5'4". How's it going, man? It's been a while. How you doing? Making it, just working all the time? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, this week is our first week of instruction at my work, so yeah, we've had to be in the office all week, and even though we had Monday off, it feels like the longest week ever. But, actually, I'm actually going to step away for a second. I will be right back, and we'll pick up where we left off. Okay? Alright. So, we are looking up witch stuff for screenplay we're writing. Our main characters are witches, so we're trying to figure out some more details about our characters to hopefully help us move forward with writing our story. Oh, so these are types of witches. So Coven Witch is obviously part of a wider group. Solitary works alone. It's just throwing everything together. So Hereditary Witch, we kind of said that's what we want to use. Being a witch was inherited powers. Crystal witches are deeply connected to vibration and power of crystals, gems, rock stones. So auras, energies, that kind of stuff. Cosmic witch are the stargazers. So lunar energies, moon cycles. I think our witches might be closer to the screen witches. Nature, healing, nurturing, draw their power tools, rituals from the earth. Yeah, so that's possibility. Hedge Witch is very similar to a Green Witch, but is not solely focused on nature. Hedge Witch works alone, doesn't adhere to any strict dogma. Okay. Plant witches work with plants. No way. Grey witches straddle between white and black magic. Okay, so maybe Helene goes from being a white witch to gray to black magic. I've been playing too much Marvel Rivals. I keep spelling magic with a K. Um, anyway, let's see. Eclectic Witch. Okay, they do whatever. Folk Witch. So Baby Witch, no. They're not beginner witches. I feel like the first line of most of these is the same. A witch that focuses on the name of the type. Uh, Sea Witch. Yeah, this is not the most useful thing. 20 types of witches. 1. Traditional. Hedge. Powerful type of witch that can astral project, see beyond our natural plane, crossover into unknown. Okay. Ceremonial or do ceremonies. Hereditary is passed down. So magic unique to a familial line. Hmm. Okay, elemental goes at sea witches, cosmic, secular, coven, or part of a group, so together they have more power. Solitary, work alone. Crystal, gray neutral. Ooh, okay. While you'll find some witches belong to an open craft, others prefer closed practices, one of which is Dianic witchcraft. Dianic witches name their practice after the Roman goddess Diana, who's the goddess of hunting, nature, and the moon. Some Dianic witches worship the goddess, who to them is a deity encompassing all goddesses and feminine nature, but typically it's all Diana all the time. These types of witches will also use magic to fight back against oppression. Of course, other types of witches might call upon Diana to help with their spells, but those practices aren't necessarily as exclusive as Dianic type of witches. You might want to look into that some more. That could be interesting. Because we could have Helene join a group. Yeah, I think that's interesting. This has become a very just, we're taking notes. Okay. So what happens after our first sequence? Maybe Helene ends up joining in with a Dianic group of witches. Then we have diviners. Chaos magic. Okay. Yeah. I think that's interesting. What is this? Okay, yeah, that's nothing. Here are just few magical powers. Some are completely fantastical, others, such as some cases, are actual ability. Okay. This is what I've been looking for. Aerokinesis, air manipulation, aeroportation, teleporting using air or wind currents. Alchemy, aquatic respiration, breathing underwater, astral projection. Chlorokinesis, that'd be manipulating plants. Yeah, manipulating and creating plants. Conjuring, cryokinesis, ice and frozen stuff. Crystalkinesis, crystals. Yeah, curse, divination, using magical methods or random chance to attain information. Yeah, I think we need that. So, ally or fake ally. Opponent could be a diviner. Electric empath. Enchantment. Ferrokinesis is manipulating metal. Alright. Fluorokinesis, flowers. Geokinesis, rocks. Granulation, turning things to sand. Heliokinesis, controlling. Hydroportation, teleporting water, illusions. Levitation, necromancy. Photokinesis. Mr. B. Hi, hello, welcome in. Yeah, you can turn whatever you want into sand. Unlike, what's his name? Sandman, who can just turn himself into sand. Yeah, where is that one? Granulation. Turning things into sand. Where were we? Necromancy, photokinesis, pyrokinesis, pyromancy, shapeshifting, which we have, the ability of sight, summoning, telekinesis, telepathy, terrakinesis, teleportation. I feel like they just everything has, if it has portation, it's about teleporting using whatever the prefix is. If it's kinesis, it's the ability to manipulate whatever the prefix is. Umbra kinesis, manipulating darkness and shadow. Okay. It's at least a decent list of just magical abilities that if we get stuck somewhere, we can look, see what they got. Who's got the magical powers? Both of our main characters are witches. So we have Margaret and we have Helene. They are both witches, and I'm trying to better define some of their abilities. So I think both of them are going to be I didn't write it here. Hereditary. I can't spell. Hereditary witches? I was way off. Oh, it's H-E-R-E. Whatever. So they're both going to be hereditary witches, so they were born with the ability to use magic, because that's going to tie into our plot more, because it's going to be about progressing through time. So their magic is going to be much more natural to them, so it's bound to their emotions, thoughts, and souls. I think they're going to lean more towards like green magics, like magics that involve the earth and the land. Because I don't want them to be too powerful. Yeah. So I think that's where they start, and then Helene at the beginning gets captured and burned at the stake, but she finds a way to survive. And I think after that, she joins a group of Dianic witches who fight back against other witches being oppressed by our antagonistic group, the Hunters. Yeah. And I think that also evolves what Helene's going to be able to do with her powers. I think they'll evolve over time. Sounds like a cool premise. Cool. I'm glad you like it. Yeah, we started on a writing prompt and then just kind of been building stuff out from there. So, yeah, we're still pretty early on in our outline. We're trying to figure out how to set up our inciting incident that kind of propels the story forward. I have a sense of it, but I need to figure out some more specifics. Yeah, so So yeah. So Helene is going to be somewhere helping other witches who want to be hunted. So she's joined. Let's see. Dianic. Group of Dianic witches. So they fight to help the oppression of other witches. Man, I cannot spell anything tonight. I am on the struggle bus. Okay. So that's why Helene is going to be at a certain place. So this first one, I think we tie. Yeah. So we're going to tie this one into Native American, because they were in one of the things we looked at. We looked at a lot of stuff. Yeah, they're not called witches, but we'll just put that for now. Alright, so after we jump forward in time, Helene and the group of Dianic witches are meeting.
I like this one.
Thank you for the follow, Mr. B. What were we saying? Okay. Yeah, because there was a cool scene in Sinners where they had some Native Americans who were vampire hunters. And I was like, I wish they would have explored that a little more. Which this isn't exactly the same, but we're dealing with witches instead of vampires. So let's say her group goes to meet with some First Nation magical people. Yeah. Sent by the Dianic group to meet with Native American witches. To establish a relationship, to protect each other from the hunters. Yeah. So that ties into our first scene, the hunt with the hunters. It establishes what Helene's been up to. Now, when and where and why is Margaret going to be there? So she's in hiding or on the run. So if we have this early enough, so maybe in the 1700s, yeah, because our first scene will probably be in the late 15, early 1600s. And then where would be yeah, because I think Margaret would be hesitant to be back in a settlement because she thinks that's how she was found. So she would want to be away from that. Yeah, and she would come across, obviously, the people who are already living there, the Native Americans. So the where would probably be how do we describe that area? Because it's not quite Midwest, because I would consider that a little higher, but it's not kind of in between East Coast and Midwest. Yeah, so that's what Helene's doing. Margaret. So loner. Untrusting of settlements. Or being around too many people. Okay, so now that we've thought of some of this stuff, I'm actually going to put this on our other document. My notes documents always get way out of hand because like I just put so much stuff in them and then like I usually use it all, but it ends up just being a cluster of stuff. Alright, so we have our first sequence with colonial America, and then we have a time jump. So that's a question I'm going to have to figure out. For our time jumps, do we want to use titles on the screen to indicate the year. Because I worry if we're going 1600s to 1700s, like, those are going to look really similar in terms of, you know, lack of technology, clothing, a lot of that kind of stuff. I don't think really changed substantially over that time. Or we don't say it, and people figure out when we make bigger jumps later on. Okay, anyway. So we'll say years later. We catch up with Margaret in the wilderness. Her clothes are ragged. She's been living on her own off the land for many years. Let me actually... So Ghost, Story World, Weakness. Yeah. So these are the things that this first sequence covers. And then the second one is going to be our inciting incident. Alright. So we catch up with Margaret in the wilderness, her clothes ragged, she's been living on her own off the land for many years. Kind of imagining she collapses. Or something. Some emergency. We'll say she's incapacitated, injured, illness, something. She doesn't have the ability to heal herself. And then she's rescued. Rescued. Wakes up later. Find herself in the care of healer. Ugh. Healer of the Native American tribe. Okay, so that gets Margaret to the tribe. Yeah, yeah, that gets Margaret to the tribe. But she would want to leave as soon as she could, right? Yeah. She wants to leave as soon as possible. Um, she thinks having her there puts the tribe in danger. So then she grabs her things, goes to leave, but stops when she finds Elaine. Approaching the tribe. What's the word I'm looking for? Like dumbfounded, stupefied, surprised. Shocked. He... Alright, yeah, Margaret is shocked to see Helene, or someone who looks just like her, but thinks it can't be her because she saw her die. But it sparks enough of her curiosity. Yeah. But it sparks enough of her curiosity. If I could put the letters in the right place. That she stays. Helene doesn't recognize Margaret. Um, so then, like we talked about earlier, Helene meets with the leaders of the tribe uh, to warn them of the hunters. And see if they want to establish an alliance. I always forget about that extra A in alliance. So my fingers sometimes move too fast, and I always seem to write like FO instead of OF for of, and add extra spaces in the word the. Leaders of the tribe. Um, Leaders of the tribe need time to consider her offer. So then, that night, Margaret approaches Helene. Because she has to find out the truth. If it really is her. Um, uh, uh, my typing sucks. I'm sorry. So that's just something we need to be aware of, that Margaret, or Helene, is very different than when we first met her. Damn it, I don't like... Yeah... Shit. I might have to rethink this. Because the end of this scene has to be the hunter showing up. But I don't like the idea. I don't know. Maybe there is a way to do it. Alright, yeah, let's just figure out what the rest of the scene looks like, and then can figure out if we want to keep it or not. Alright, so Margaret approaches Helene. So what would that conversation be? Because I think Margaret would continue to not want to reveal herself. In case her mind is playing tricks on her because she's recovering from being incapacitated. Yeah. Playing a trick. She's recovering from being incapacitated. Ugh. And then Helene obviously doesn't recognize her. I think she's just another we'll say explorer. Got lost in the woods. And then Margaret decides to tell her the truth. Double R, not double P. We got is interrupted by an attack on the tribe. Helene offers to help fight. Tribe by the hunters. Offers to help the tribe. And Margaret would want to run away. Yeah, I don't want to show violence against Native Americans because it's fucking unnecessary, but it's also part of American history. I think we just don't show the violence, just the aftermath of it. So there's chaos. Helene offers to help the tribe. Margaret wants to run away. There has to be something that convinces Margaret that Helene is the same. So there has to be something that convinces Margaret that Helene is the same as the one she knew. Because when they get separated at the end of this sequence, Margaret has to be propelled to find her again. We need to figure out different end to the sequence for Margaret. Because I don't want to have her run away twice in a row, because that's repetitive. There has to be some other thing that happens that separates them. The next morning, Vidsy! Hi, hello, welcome in. Yeah, all's going well. Trying to figure out our inciting incident kind of sequence. So we have kind of our initial sequence of them in colonial times and how they get separated and all of that. And then we have years later when they meet for the second time and things go wrong and they get separated. So the next morning, aftermath of a fight, Margaret searches, but finds no... What's the word I'm looking for? Sign. It's getting late. I can't think of the word sign of Helene. I don't know. I think I'm gonna have to revisit this and maybe rethink some elements of it, because it does feel a little too similar to our first sequence. But I think the general idea of having them cross paths again. Yeah, patterns are good, but repetition is not. True. Yeah. So we can have similar things happening, but they need to unfold in different ways. Is this it for the night? Yeah, probably. Um, or shortly it will be. Yeah, we did look up some more stuff about witches and figured out some elements that we can use in the story. Seems like we got a ton done already. We're getting started still. Yeah, and like, one thing I found out with writing is like, even if you put down on the page something bad, you put down something and you can improve it later. Like, writing is all just rewriting, making things better. Um, and once you have something kind of down on paper, you can start to think about it more, and you might be able to start coming up with better ways of doing things. So, even though I don't think this sequence is perfect, I think it's at least a foundation where we can start to think about what else we could do or what elements are missing from it. Yeah, writing doesn't mean you end with what you start with. Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't need to be perfect the first time. It just needs to be written. And once it's written, you can... None of this is permanent. We can change anything, anywhere, at any time. So... yeah, I don't think this sequence is perfect. It's missing some stuff, I think, but it has some elements that I think we need to have. So, no. What did I just do? Okay. But, yeah, I think that might be it for tonight. So at least give me a little time to think over what else could be in here, what is missing. Yeah. Yeah. I think that'll do it for tonight. Yeah, sleep on. Yeah, when I get away from stuff, like, it's funny how many times, like, I'm trying to figure out something with what I'm writing, and, like, I'll feel like I'm at a dead end. I'll, like, stand up, go walk down the hall or something, and, like, by the time I get to the end of the hall, I'm like, okay, I know exactly what I needed to do different. So, I mean, yeah. Sometimes it comes, like, right away like that. You just need a change of scene, like, whatever it might be. Keep sticky notes so you can write down your ideas. Yeah, I always have, on my phone, I have the Notes app and I have Google Docs, so yeah, I always have something to just uh, jot stuff down like that. Yeah, it's weird how our brain works like that. Like, yeah, you feel completely stuck, and then, like, you walk 10 feet away, and it's like, hey, this is what my brain needed. uh, yeah, but that's a good end for today. Let's see if anyone I follow is streaming. Anything interesting? Looks like... what? Okay. Sorry. I was checking Twitch and I got gifted some subs to some channels that I may or may not have ever actually been in. Yeah, trying to get better at writing my ideas. Yeah, and that's kind of another thing I've found out with writing is like when you just have an idea, it's a lot of times it's perfect in your brain and like it all makes sense, it's perfect, and then when you force yourself to have to write it down, like sometimes you're like, wait, I thought this was perfect, but it's not coming out perfect the way I thought it was, and having to write it down, like something in that process kind of forces you to make an idea real, and in doing that, like it reveals the flaws to it. I don't know if that actually makes sense, but gifting subs on Twitch is, yeah, it's weird. Like it should mostly go to people that I already follow, but I guess the algorithm probably does. Yeah, yeah. Major gifted a sub last a time to someone, and I'm like, I don't know if that person's ever been in here before, but uh, they're getting a sub, so hope they make use of it. Yeah, it makes sense. Yay! I like it when I can actually make sense. Alright, yeah, I think I'm gonna end it here for tonight. Try to get some sleep, and yeah, we'll come back fresh on probably Sunday afternoon. Yeah, and try to pick it up and see where we go next. But yeah, thanks for stopping by, hanging out, vids. Um, Hope the rest of your week is good, and yeah, I will see you around. And anyone else who might be lurking, uh, yeah, thank you to everyone who stopped by and said hi. I know a lot of people had other stuff they had to do tonight, um, but yeah, yeah, see you later. Bye.